do you go when you need to talk to somebody? How do you approach the people that you need to be around you when you're hurting? My 3 kids, they all had a different way of going about that when they were younger. My oldest son, when he was little, he would want to just let us know that he was hurting a little bit, but he would stand off in the corner and kind of watch us. And then my second son, he was the talker. He would come and sit on the couch and just kind of talk to us a little bit and try to work it through, even when he was 3 or 4 years old. And then my little girl, when she was about 3, she would sit on the couch and kind of get real close, especially when she was sad or lonely, or just needed to feel like she was safe. Well, she would kind of just cuddle. And being in my presence, just getting up close was all she really needed. Where do you go? What do you do? Who do you confide in when you're lonely and looking for someone that could help you? We all go through that. There was a woman a long time ago that actually encountered a man named Jesus Christ. She needed something and ran across him, and it changed her life forever. Here's how it kind of unfolded. He was out there with his buddies called the disciples, and they're on this boat, and they came up to the edge of the lake in this little village, and there were all kind of people. The whole village came out in order to see him. And they wanted to know what he was like because his fame had spread. Everybody was talking about Jesus. And they wanted to be around him. So the crowd was excited and exuberant as he got off the boat with his disciples. But then this one man named Jairus, he was kind of a big shot of the town. He was the synagogue president. He was probably well liked and certainly had a whole lot of money. And Jairus came, and somebody had gone to grab him because they knew that Jairus' story was going through a tough time now. So as he and his friends, maybe family members, kind of rushed into the crowd kind of parted as he came up to Jesus. He threw himself down at the feet of Jesus. He wasn't even really supposed to do that, a man of his position. But see, he needed to get close to him. He needed something so desperately. So Jairus started to tell Jesus his story quickly and kind of laid it out there that he had a 12-year-old daughter. Everybody probably knew her and loved her. Who doesn't love a 12-year-old girl? And he said, my little daughter is dying, right on the edge of death. And Jairus was in so much pain and heartache that his money and his power and his fame didn't make any difference. Jesus had come right in the nick of time, so Jairus went and threw himself at the feet of Jesus, pleading with him to come. So Jesus did. He went with him. He said, let's go to your house. So Jesus and Jairus started walking, and maybe they're talking about it as they hurry off to his house. The whole crowd started to press in around Jesus and all the people there as they're moving to Jairus' house. Maybe some on the fringes that didn't know Jairus too much, they just wanted to see the miracle happen, but everybody else was sharing in Jairus' pain and disappointment. So as they're hurrying through the town, this woman, we didn't even know her name. This woman came into the crowd trying to get close to Jesus. She had a story too. She had an incredible need. She was so desperate. See, 12 years before this, it's interesting, 12 years of joy with Jairus' daughter and 12 years of pain this woman had experienced. That's really mostly all we know about her personal life. What had happened is 12 years before, she had gone to the place where the women in the village where she lived would go during their monthly cycle. And they would go off together, and they were ceremonially unclean during this time. And the women would be there until their cycle finished, and then they would go back in their homes and their lives. But this one woman, something happened. 10 days, 2 weeks, we don't even know how long it took, but eventually she got worried, then she got desperate. And they called the village priest, who was the kind of only medical person they had in the town. And he came and he gave her a new name. Maybe he was nice about it, maybe he was harsh. But it didn't matter because he gave her a new name, the name unclean. And he said, you have to leave. I'm sorry you have this problem where you're still bleeding and hemorrhaging, but You're unclean and we're afraid. So she had to pack her things and leave her family and friends. She had a lot of money because we do know that she went to a lot of doctors all around the countryside, but nobody could help her. In fact, she got worse and worse. So somehow, right in the nick of time, just like Jairus, she heard about Jesus. Somehow she found out that Jesus had arrived. And all of us know about his fame. He was well known as a healer and a lover of people and a person that changed lives. He was making a huge impact. And everybody wanted to see him and be around him. This woman had a more immediate need and concern. She was still bleeding. 12 years of pain and brokenness. See, she wasn't legally allowed to be in the crowd, but she broke the law because she wanted to be close to him. And as she went through the crowd, heading off to Jairus' house, everybody pressing in, she kind of snuck her way through the crowd because she thought, if I just touch Jesus' cloak, if I can just touch a little bit of him, then I'll be healed, then I'll be okay. And what's really cool when you look at the story, or actually the event in history, as she reaches out, as soon as she touches his cloak, the Bible uses this really great word. It's a weird word. It's one of my favorite words. As soon as she touches him, immediately her bleeding stopped. I mean, bam, right then. And that's why it's a weird word, because as soon as you say it, it's too late. Immediately, as soon as she touches the hem of his garment, she's healed. 12 years. Right then. The crowd's oblivious. They don't know. They're pressing in and pushing to go to Jairus' house. But Jesus knew. Yeah, he knew power had gone out from him. In fact, he stopped right there in the road. And the whole procession stopped. Even the people pressing in and pushing him forward, they all stopped right there. Because Jesus turned around the crowd and said something that really is bizarre. He said, "Who touched me? Hey, who touched me?" And everybody started backing up, wondering what had happened, including probably Jairus, the disciples, his friends, and the leader of the disciples, Peter, Jesus' best friend on earth. They start arguing with Jesus. Peter said, "Come on, are you kidding me? Who didn't touch you? Everybody that touched Jesus, raise your hand." And you can just see the whole crowd getting more and more nervous as Jesus is looking around intently to see, who touched me? The woman knew it was her. She knew she had broken the law. She knew she was healed, and she felt free, but not really free. 12 years of suffering and pain. So she realized, as his eyes locked on hers, that Jesus was talking about her. So she came before him and threw herself down at his feet, just like Jairus had. And as she threw herself down at his feet, she couldn't speak. She was shaking all over because she was so afraid. And as she was afraid, she lay there on the ground before Jesus. Now, a lot of people kind of think that that particular event, as she lay there to him, moves on right to the next line in the Bible. And that next line in the Bible says this: she told Jesus the whole truth. As if that she had lived 12 years in isolation, wandering from town to town, city to city, ultimately finding herself in this particular town right when Jesus was there. And she throws herself down at his feet because he had said, "Who touched me?" And then immediately started defending herself, telling her whole story. I don't think it happened that way. If you go from that kind of pain, that kind of history, breaking the law, entering the crowd, touching Jesus, feeling the power of his touch, and feeling physical healing for the first time in over a decade, then he busts you, calls you out in the crowd of hundreds perhaps. She's laying there in front of him shaking. Well, all the Bible tells us is she eventually told him the whole truth, her story. But I'm absolutely convinced, knowing that Jesus Christ is the God of the universe that came to earth not only to heal and to touch, but to communicate to us and to that woman how deeply he cared for her. That as she lay there shaking, I'm absolutely convinced that he knelt down on the ground, got right next to her on that dirty road. Maybe he picked up some of the dirt right there, giving her time to calm down and to realize that she was truly in a safe place. I believe that he held her hand, maybe wiped a stray strand of hair out of her face as they sat together in the dirt. I'm convinced that he stared into her eyes to let her know for sure that she had someone who really cared, who was not content just to heal her physically, but that she needed the healing touch of his care and concern for her. So eventually she told her story. She maybe said, 12 years ago I had this problem, and perhaps he said, I know I was there. You didn't know I was there, but I was next to you. Tell me more. And as she began to unpack her story sitting there in the ordinary dirt of that road that day, she told him the whole truth. And at the end of it, he said, you may go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Amazing day. Jairus was nervous too, but Jesus also went to Jairus' house and healed his daughter. 2 lives, 2 families, 2 individual precious people, a young girl and a woman who needed his touch, who needed his presence. I told you before when we were walking up there that my 3 kids had different ways to express their need. That one would stand off to the side hoping we would notice him. Another would sit on the couch and need to just talk. And a third, my daughter, would want to just come and push her head into my shoulder. And just by being next to me was enough. I don't know where you go, who you talk to, the person, the place you feel the safest. When you're walking on the dirty road of life that at times and in so many ways is so painful and so hard. Maybe for you it's your parents or a good friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend or other people that are in your life, and you know that they're there for you, and that's fantastic. But we all need to know that there is someone that will sit with us when we truly need to be held. You matter to Jesus Christ. And he invites you to let him hold your hand. He invites you to look into the eyes of love, to receive his embrace, and to know that he is always with you, and he is always there to hear your story and to sit with you on the dusty road. Come and hand your story to Jesus Christ.
What is giving me life? It is written on my heart. I go sailing through the motions, my sails slowly tear apart. Giving what has to be, only that and nothing more. Wind blows through ripped canvas, I end up on rocky shore. I'm tired of shallow waters that I've been wading through, thinking that I'm trying to make it closer to you.